deficient in the natural, homely aspects of intelligence, which our forefathers seem to possess in reasonable abundance. So today we have people who sort of live on little islands. These little islands are of many kinds and types. Among the more interesting of these islands, perhaps, is the religious island. Here individuals belonging to certain beliefs isolate themselves from the beliefs of all other people and settle down to defend their own convictions. To depart from these convictions is heresy, and the person who is brought up in a narrowed religious community is subject to persecution even today for nonconformity. Therefore, in religion we have a group of people to whom religious matters are supremely important. Now, no one doubts this importance, but we can doubt the attitude of the individuals involved in most instances. The importance of the subject is not primarily sectarian. Religion is not important because it teaches a dogma. Religion is important because it inspires a way of life by which the individual is capable of facing the emergencies of living. If we take, therefore, religion on the level of utility, basic usefulness to man, sectarianism has a tendency to retreat, because we find that nearly all religions are useful to the needs of people, and persons of many different beliefs depend heavily upon their spiritual convictions for the courage for daily living. Therefore, the purpose of religion primarily is to give us a new sense of value by which we can live more constructively and have greater incentives to integrity.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me okay? Please let me know in the comments. I wanted to start with that Manly Pete Hall because it's been sitting with me a lot, especially with this whole idea that, you know, spirituality as a kind of abject cure for mental health. And I think what he's talking about is, you know, any kind of dogmatic or you know, sullen subscription to anything kind of, excuse me, vilifies it. So please let me know if you can hear. Awesome. You guys can. Thank you guys for joining me. That's really nice. I'm trying to do something a little earlier in the day. Honestly, because, you know, why not? My schedule won't allow this for the coming weeks, but here we are. Yeah, I was talking to Oswald in the chat a little bit before too. I think, you know, using the title Depression and Metaphysics and mentioning that, you know, I'll be talking a little bit about the Mitch Horowitz text of the same name, but this is not a book review. This is not like a critique on the text, because full disclosure, this book is, or this text at least, I mean, it's insanely thin, right? But it's also the last in a masterclass series that he was doing. So it's more of like this, you know, brief addendum to a larger thing that he was talking about. But reading this the other day, especially as someone that's like in the throes, or I guess like the pitfalls of, I don't know, not anguish, that's a little too dramatic, but I guess just like subservient to kind of mental chemical imbalances. Reading this text, it left me longing for things that I wish were addressed. And so I think it's like in the air. You know, I had recorded an episode of PRAGMAGICK, a solo show, of me discussing kind of where I was at with mental health. And I re-recorded it like 3 times. And then I saw that my dear friend Doug of What Magic Is This put out this beautiful podcast about mental health and the magician. And there's just something in the air with it. I think we all need to kind of have a touchstone or some sort of communion with, I think, this other that is, chemical imbalance. And Mitch Horowitz's book is, or I hate to call it a book. It's very thin. It's basically just a printed lecture, and to his credit, I'm sure he's got a lot more to say. And to his credit, I think he did say more and works like the Miracle Club. But, reading this and understanding that it's, as far as a introductory kind of, footnote to, the struggling metaphysician, if you will, like it left some things on the floor and it gave me some revelations, and I've been dying to kind of talk about that. Not from Mitch himself, but kind of from me wishing it was a different text than it was. But that's on me. That's not on him. He does have some great ideas in here, and a lot of it has to do with kind of this pugilist idea. And this is why I put it in the title, the pugilist. I think this is the perfect analogy for battling brain chemistry. It's like this bloodied and bandaged, fisticuff, dude in the ring, just, getting the shit kicked out of him with brain chemistry. He's in the corner, and his coach is putting the metal on his eye to stop the swelling. And he's telling him, just roll with the punches, or, duck, or find an opening, because if you sit and idle as a pugilist, if you sit and dance around, like it's going to hit you no matter what. It's going to come at you. So in my mind, this is magic. To me, has always been a way to kind of put that coach in the corner and to help battle, these things that are the other, these things that no matter your will or your intention, you are subservient to, or I hate to use the word subservient, you are forever battling to commune with. And I think with depression metaphysics, at least in Mitch's text, he's got some good ideas about, just like radical prayer. And I love this idea he has about fighting evil. And it's like, it's almost like this flame you have to engulf to get out of bed every morning, to just like motivate you through the day to just smite kind of darkness in the world, or whatever you find quote unquote evil. And of course, I enjoy that kind of folkloric sense of what gets us through. The pugilist idea, though, is funny to me because I think often of the tombstone of Charles Bukowski, and his tombstone is a boxer, and it says "Don't try," and I think that's like the most cynical shit in the world, and actually pretty hilarious. But to me, I would say the opposite, right? There's all this talk about like, don't try, just do, and I think that's bullshit. I think like a lot of it is sussing out, is a diversification of ideologies and attempts and experimentation, to find what works for you. And, to that, I would say, is my mic too loud? I feel like my mic's too loud. Hey guys, nice to see you all. Yeah, I hope my mic isn't too loud. Last thing you want to hear is me breathing. But I would say, to the wit of, fuck the don't try cynical attitude, and this idea of in battered, bandaged and bloodied, brutalized like boxer fighting against chemistry. I think we're looking at it wrong. I think we're looking at depression wrong. I think us in the spiritual, I hate to use that word, us in like the the communities that seek the other, right? And in the spiritual journey, I think there's like the only initiatory ideology is that we confirm that there is another. We confirm that there is something that's battling against our true will, and we have to focus our own self to kind of, commune or fight with, or Sun Tzu that shit, right? To keep it closer, um, even if it's an enemy. And I think there's something lacking in a lot of the narrative, or the just the will to, you know work with, to commune. And I think, thinking of brain chemistry as another, as being, in Congress with something outside of your intent, of your true will, is fascinating. I think we should almost look at brain chemistry in the spirit model sense, that instead of banishing, right, instead of being told to lock it away or to push it down, we need to work in Congress. We should bind, right? We should, we should work. We should commune. I think communion is the perfect word for it, because all too often you find uh, this, that, and the other of someone battling through it and wanting to rid of it, and because of the stigma of mental health, that it's, an aberration, that it's not treated as a gift in a lot of ways as it is. I think something as small as a paranoia is just like misplaced excitement, right? It's misplaced, uh, enveloped kind of beingness or focus, excuse me. And so, yeah, I think there's just this whole narrative structure when it comes to depression, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to chemical imbalances, that I truly believe we should take a folkloric approach to. I think we should take a spirit model approach to. And I don't understand why the tween can't meet on those things, And a lot of people would say, well, where does pharmacology come in, right? Isn't that just muting, you know, um, these things? Isn't that just brushing it aside? And to that wit, I would say no. I would say, much like, conjuring, or, the evocation of things, you give offerings, right? It's these gifts to kind of keep it temperate, and to keep it, the spirits that you might be working with, or, the other that you might be working with. You're offering things as some sort of like subservient, please work with me. And I think that medication can be that too. And I think what's the problem is that the narrative that we're spinning to children, I mean, such as myself, to a lot of the people I know, is that we are an aberration, that our thoughts and our constructs are totally abnormal, um, in a way that they're defeating, that they're not working for the greater good. And I would say that it's just misappropriated. It's just not, that's, we're giving a false narrative about, the actual dark star of this big and bad when it comes to, brain chemistry. Obviously, this is me spinning a web, a yarn about my own, biased kind of thing. Obviously, there's people that have very destructive, tendencies and stuff. And I don't really, I'm not really considering that. I'm talking more of the, this living well of grief, of trauma. And I started thinking the other day too, after reading this, it's like, well, perhaps instead of saying, hey, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, or like fight, for this common good, find something to fight for. I think, like, even more so, the initiatory thing should be, what is the story you're telling yourself about the thing you're quote unquote fighting against, and do we really need to fight against it, or do we need to work in communion with it? And I think in my recent days, very recently, that sober, in a good place, nothing to battle against, nothing to warrant a wash of you know low or high, or whatever. It's become very apparent to me that I have a bad relationship with it, that it was always something I was battling against. And I even used magic, and I used spirituality since getting off medication to kind of combat it, in a way, to kind of supplement it, when really it should just been working in Congress with it. And I think that the true medium, like the true avenue of health, needs to be idealized in the sense that these are against our will, against our intentions, against our our wants and desires. There is something that we're working against, and that could be the microcosm of brain chemistry, that could be the macrocosm of chaos, the nature of chaos. And I think as I get older, I'm finding more and more it's not a battle. You don't have to be a pugilist. You don't have to sit in the ring and try to smite something. Maybe it's a dance. I don't know. That's really silly. But maybe it's an art collaboration. It's working in tandem instead of against. I'm going to check the comments because I've been talking for a while. How are all of you doing? Let's see. Siroth. Yeah, I never realized coffee was so narcotic till I quit harder drugs. Yeah. Wait, are you talking about me? Because I'm definitely on a lot of coffee right now. So yeah, I'm really I don't know. I'm taken aback that all of you are here. As I had said, I guess to be a little bit real on the subject, I get solemn into when I'm battling against this stuff and don't actually have a visible enemy. I don't have. I'm so used to like a drama to fight against. I'm so used to a beast to smite, or something to conquer, and to sit with me in a place where I think honestly, all things considered, I've never been better, and to still feel these things. I think it's a spiritual aspect with brain chemistry. I think it is an absolute you know dis discontinuous like purveyance of the self, where if you're it's like the warrior that like comes home from war and has nothing to battle against, but he can't sleep on his own bed. He's got to sleep on the floor. He's got night terrors. It's this weird amalgam of trauma and weird shit that will just punch through, that will just persist, no matter how well your environment or your default setting, I guess, is these days. And it's really fascinating to me in that sense that I was writing the foreword to Derek Hunter's new book, and he wrote a grimoire, but it's not really like a grimoire to the default, I would say, understanding of what a grimoire is. It's more about his like celebration and intent of every ingredient that he's using for his own practice. And reading it and writing the forward, I was thinking about how we do that with health. Like, we should be as intentful and as serious and as I don't know, as measured, about what we put in our bodies, about what we sleep on, what we fill our brains with during the day. And the reason why I started this episode with that Manly P. Hall thing was because there's something that really stuck out to me with that chat. And I think one of my biggest gripes and arguments or frustrations, I should say, is that I'm too spread out. Like I have too many interests. I'm too diverse. I don't really have a focus necessarily, or like some trajectory that I'm hitting that I want to hit. It's just kind of a huge spew of creativity over a lot of things. And he said in that actually I have it written down. He said in that talk, he said, diversification does not mean wasting time. He said it means the spreading of our mental capacities over a larger area of expression. And like that to me kind of solidified the idea that it's okay to not have a definite chief aim, as Horowitz would call it, or a budding, pugilist desire, right? I'm not going for a certain type of belt. I'm just going for a belt, I guess. But I'm going to check the chat here. Keats, do I fancy myself as an empath? I would never call myself that. No, absolutely not. I mean, I feel compassion. I feel a deep compassion. It's also why I kind of denounce astrology. They probably, I mean, not as a whole, but just the kind of dime store astrology, because as a Pisces, they say that that's nomenclature. But no, I do not fancy myself an empath. I will never call myself an empath, nor a light worker, or or any of that stuff. I think to me that's obvious, especially within the spiritual path. Obviously, like if you're filled with compassion, like do you really need to announce it, like as some sort of badge of honor that you can put yourself in the shoes of others? No, I think that's experience. I think that takes a long crooked life, to find that, and people that kind of, I don't want to denounce everyone that uses that term. I just have a real weird affiliation with that. I want to be a good man. I want to yeah. I think that's what it comes down to. I want to be a good person. I've got stuff in my past, a lot of it partially due to unmedicated or uninvestigated mental anguish, anger, but when it comes down to it now, it's just, I want to be a good man. I want to do good for people because I love the people in my life. I want to keep them around. I was never good at this. So, it goes with saying that I'm very appreciative of everyone in the chat. I'm very appreciative of the communities that we've built, talking about this stuff and being open with. This, like, to me is like the whole point. It's not about subscribers or likes or peddling some ideology. It's almost about embarrassing yourself. It's almost about feeling free to just be off the cuff and be a goof, and go to sleep at night feeling like, well, that didn't work, let's try something else. So empath, no, I do not consider myself that. So Robin says, you have a keen ear when you listen to people. That's a gift. I've seen it in you. Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think, I was talking about this recently with a friend, that I'm so interested in the trajectory of people's experiences and like the individualistic nature of like this cacophony of ingredients that create a persona or a personality, a human being. Like, it's fascinating to me how specifically odd everyone is. And I love that. And I think that, me having this diversification, to bring it back to Manly P. Hall, of like experience and stuff. Like I've always done well with just, being a floater in that sense. Like I've always done well in really dark situations, like hanging out with real ne'er-do-wells and naysayers in Oakland, California, or being amongst an academic crew. I've just always had this appreciation of enjoying everyone's different trajectories, and all of your guys' selves included. So yeah, it's definitely a passion. Let's see. Niche said, I always thought my emotional overtones were chemical too, and not the waves of psychic energy coming off of the collective. I always thought okay. So are you saying that you now know the separation of prime material, what is mine and what is not? Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to say that, it's like tapped into a source or anything. I think honestly, like, empathy is built with experience, and I think, working with children, I see that all the time. I see the nature try to will out of a nurture situation. So there is both, but I honestly believe it's the wealth of experience that builds character, that builds a sense of I don't know, camaraderie, I guess I would say. That sounds, no, I don't think that's the right word. I guess a sense of like purpose, in a sense. Sense. Lots of senses. I think that's my go-to word for saying this is not doctrine. I'm not saying anything that I believe is absolute or true. I've just got a sense about it, That's another thing with the, I think with experience too, is that how can you purvey an absolutist ideology if you know people? If you, well, not know people, say, I don't want to do the biblical thing and, like, being absolutist. If you understand that people come from different, trajectories and ideologies, and have, different makeup, psychologically and spiritually, like, how can you preach an absolute word with a big W? How does that work? How do you do that? What are the tethers that bind us all? Like the truths, the ultimate truths that we can say that, hey, celebrate your individuality, but these are unquestioning, um, unquestioning specifics about what makes a substantial kind of life. And I think, religion and theology, I think they touch on that, but they don't, they miss the mark a lot of the time. Let's see. Perhaps alchemical is the right word for coalescence of the chemical and the psychic. Yeah, I like the word confluence a lot, because I think of trajectories, especially spiritual trajectories, as rivers. Flowing kind of one direction. Forever kind of chaotic, and so the confluence of that, the little lake bed where the tween meet, is that still water, is that hushed tone until it runs to the other. And like, coalescence is good, but yeah, I'm a big fan of the idea of the confluence. I only just started to claim the word this last 2 years, and I've been so put off by the new age shite. Oh, sense. Yeah. Yeah, probably just outed myself by using the word sense. I'm so tired of the connotations of words, and that's there's a big part of Mitch's book and Depression and Metaphysics that is spent kind of telling the reader that in his long years of publishing self-help and understanding these quote unquote gurus and stuff, that they're kind of awful people, that verbology, I don't think that's a word. I would say the lexicon that they use, the terms that they throw around are merely for an optic, marketing thing. And I always appreciated about that when it comes to Mitch, because he's had firsthand experience dealing with people that I'm sure we've all read, or maybe even listened to lectures about. He's not one to name names, but it's very apparent to me that this is another reason why you don't deify people. You don't put people on pedestals. I heard there's some Twitter feed the other day about some person Gordon White had on. Everyone stopped listening to Gordon White because he had this interviewee on, or he was saying something they didn't like, which is just preposterous. The fact that you can put all your chips into one person and get so disappointed when they're their own person and not your person is ridiculous. That's why you never bet on anyone. Human beings are human beings. And we should be celebrating that. We should be celebrating the mistakes without excusing them. But like this whole ideology of just, people being so perturbed and downright upset about, a person they look up to as a kind of siphon of knowledge, expressing a view they don't agree with, and now there's this banishment of it. Listen, I don't agree with Gordon White on a lot of things. As a matter of fact, I haven't listened to him in a long time. But this idea that he's doing it for you, or he's got to align with your personal beliefs, is just fucking preposterous. And it's ridiculous. And it's beside the point. You should allow him to be a glutton for, opinion. That's why you're listening to him. But anyways, I I digress. I'm checking the chat here. Let's see. Perhaps blah, blah, blah. Empathetic. I celebrate human beings. We're the best things we have. Robin Eagle song, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, with the stigma, there's a lot of this in the spiritual community too, with depression and with mental, I would say, anguish in many areas, that it's frowned upon, that you're not centered enough, you're not enlightened enough to deal with it, in a radical kind of absolution, and I kind of fell victim to that too. When I stopped taking medication a couple of years ago, I fell pretty deep into spiritual praxis. And, I thought that was the hole that was being filled, for, my chemical imbalances and stuff. I figured like, oh yeah, so like, this kind of new thought idea, right? Just think positive, like you're creating your own universe. But when you don't have a say or a lick of idea about what the intent of your brain chemistry is going to allow that day, that's a fallacy. That's a dark twin of of understanding the self. And so yeah, I don't subscribe to the idea that it has to be just science, or it has to be just spirituality. It has to be like enlightenment is something so based in cognitive will, because I think that's bullshit. I think anyone who tells you that is lying. They're lying straight to your face. And the important thing is to really ask them what they do on Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Because I'm pretty sure they're not doing something that represents what they're preaching. Let's see. I celebrate him. Yeah. You have an option to look away always. Absolutely. Yeah, I was tempted to go to Gordon White's semi-recent event in Portland. Oh, Oswald, were you in Portland? I didn't know that. So, funny story, Oswald. Nish and I were around there. That's all I'll say about that. But I busked in front of the convention. I played music on a like broken guitar and a suitcase. Um, I didn't go in. I didn't have the money, to support such a thing. Um, but it was my intention to just kind of, maybe celebrate in a nebulous way, people that were interested in that sort of thing. And so I can't tell you more than what it was like, at the bar near there and what the line was like going in because I was playing music outside of it. But that's funny. I had no idea. Vancouver, 2 hours south of PDX. Okay, cool. Yeah. That was a weird. I don't remember what my impetus was. I remember there was like a whole rush. I remember at the very last minute, like, do I want to do this? Is it worth it? Like, very, very last minute. And then driving over there. And luckily I got to meet some good friends at a local bar, actually a haunted bar called the White Eagle that I used to play all the time in Portland. It's one of the oldest saloons in Portland. It's a beautiful place. And the convention wasn't far from there. So to me, like I had gotten the merits of the convention because I got to, share a drink with good people, meet some people face to face for the first time and hang out. And I didn't have to spend a lot of money and listen to, the astrology forecasts of the coming year. I kid. But yeah, it was cool. I'm glad I did it. It was definitely interesting. I've had people listen to PRAGMAGICK and email me saying, I remember this guy playing guitar on a suitcase that said PRAGMAGICK on it. Was that you? I was like, yep, that's me. So yeah, it was a very interesting experience. But yeah, I couldn't afford it. I couldn't really and even if I could, it was hard to kind of rectify spending that money, I don't know. To each their own. But in any case, like I appreciate Gordon White. Absolutely. I don't think I'm a big fan of anyone, to tell you the truth, except for my friends, I don't think I listen to someone to inspire me all the time. Like some people really take to Gordon or to other people that we know personally or whatever. And I think that's just that's the caliber of intent that I've got to deal with. That I'm not trying to be insulting or like some sort of like rebellious dude that's like, I never subscribe. I just like I get real turned off real quick when there's like an audience of that caliber, I think, like that is ready and waiting to be disappointed by that person's opinions, which happens all the time. We should celebrate their weirdness, and thank God they have differing opinions, even if they're not sound to you. I don't know. Let's see. So how's everyone doing? Did I talk a lot? Did we cover, I think, my ideas on depression and metaphysics? Like I said, this isn't really a book review. It's not really a book. It is, very much a fifth installment to a larger selection of a bigger lecture. Actually, the lecture was in Denver. Funny enough, it says this short book is adapted from the final of 5 lectures I delivered in Denver in 2018. Yeah, so this isn't a book review. obviously it's going to leave a lot to be desired, but I appreciated the fire that it kind of put in me, reading it quickly, in somewhat of a desperation in dealing with, recent mental stuff. I appreciated that it made me really jump onto this idea of what I want to read when it comes to depression and metaphysics, or like what kind of theories and explorations like we can come to with how to deal with it in like a narrative way. And I think that's where I came up with this whole thing about using it as a spirit model in a sense. I can read this real quick. I said, as I've been dealing with mental health episodes as of late, I've had a revelation as to the confluence, is that word, of brain chemistry and metaphysics. I said, it's not entirely sound quite yet, so forgive me. This is just a rant. But I've been toying with the idea of mental chemistry as a daemon. Once you surrender to the knowledge of its accord, the idea is to commune, is to unify and calibrate its union over the self. For what's the first step of a spiritual journey but a sort of surrender to a force outside the self that needs unification? It needs respect, and needs a sort of reverence to its own intentions. It's almost as if those of us touched by this type of brain chemistry is a lack of communication as to the modes and mechanics of the self. So perhaps treating the chemistry as if it were a spirit to bind and course with, using science, ritual, and reverence, is the metaphysical communion. Meds are just their offerings, gifting things they need, right? Absolutely. I think that also in this narrative structure too, that like trauma itself could be, not idealized, but trauma itself could be pictured or imagined as a trickster spirit, right? It's a trickster spirit that's asking to be heard, to be dealt with, to have communion. Because trauma will bark, and it will punch, and it will beat, your frontal cortex until it is actually dealt with. And I like thinking of it as these these entities of experience, and bad ones too. But these memories themselves turn into a sort of ghost, and they haunt, and they haunt, and they haunt, and they knock, and they rap, and they they punch, and they poltergeist your brain until you actually kind of deal with them or do some sort of kind of medical seance, right, with therapy and medication and that sort of stuff. So my idea is that perhaps there's a narrative there, especially for children. Instead of teaching them that they're aberrations, that the that the things happening in their brain are wrong and they need to be smited and fixed and to be sullied and taken away to normalize. What if we could use it in kind of a theological or spiritual sense and say that it's not so much that you need to smite them or fix them, it's that you need to commune with them. You need to understand the merits, because there are merits of people that deal with these things. We were talking about empathy earlier. I think that's that can be a superpower. I think compassion can be a superpower, but I also think it can be a symptom of these sort of brain uh disfluencies, I guess you would say. But yeah, what if we can we can use the narrative of theology or the spirit model as something just to convey to people struggling with it, that it's not about a battle, like as a pugilist, that you're forever fighting and ever bloodied and ever beat up, but it's more of a dinner. It's more of a dance, as Robin would agree. It's more of a partner that's disgruntled because you're not listening the right way, you're not communing the right way, you're not offering the right way. It's like a goetic demon just kind of punching your brain until you actually like pay attention and understand how to commune with it. You know, obviously not literally, or maybe, I don't know, maybe literally. Who knows? But I think there's something there about thinking about these tufts and these tundras of thought and deep, you know, unrest as not things to smite, but things to entertain or to be in congress with. And I think that's my loose theory about it. That's something obviously I'm toying with. Obviously, I've done a pretty basic search about, you know, mental health and the spirit model. And there are some academic papers out there. They're not quite what I'm talking about, but it's definitely something to explore. And I think it's harmless, honestly, because I think that, you know, especially as children or as we grow up, even we are narratives we tell ourselves. We are stories that we tell ourselves. You know, who we are when we wake up is this like piecemeal idea of who we were the day before that we kind of put together real quickly, right? So like, what if we could do that with brain chemistry, and as a caveat, with brain chemistry that we can actually, you know, be in Congress with. Obviously, there's caveats to all of this idea or all of this theory, but anyways, I will check the comments. I really appreciate all of you stopping by. Like I said, I had recorded a mental health episode alone the last 2 weeks. I've done it 3 times, and it either felt too overproduced, or it felt not honest enough, or it felt I don't know. There was a soul missing to it, and I think that's why I really enjoy the live stream thing, because this is it. This is what's going through my head. You know, you can only do so much preparation, but the ability to kind of convey stuff as it punches through is, I think, more therapeutic than not. So I appreciate all of you for being my free therapists and listening to my wants and woes. I love you all. I'm going to check the comments. Let's see. You're doing. Yeah, I haven't done a live chat in forever. Some of you might have noticed that I had a 10-second live chat an hour ago. It's just me going, nope, because I fucked up. So it's been a while. This feels good. I really need to do this. I've been talking to Davey a lot about, you know, just kind of unloading at least once a week, not putting so much you know, pomp and circumstance and like editing and creating like a big show, but just having this kind of consistent output. And I think I'm going to mask them in little book reviews such as this, because I find in my book reviews that it has little to do with the book anymore and more what the book incited or inspired. And so that's why I really appreciate this text, as even as small as it is, and probably as you know, non insular as it needed to be, because it's part of a bigger thing. That Mitch always kind of throws things into gear for me in a lot of ways, you know, and there's no good or bad about it. It's just he really kind of ignites stuff, especially for him touching so slyly. And slyly is not, because that kind of connotes menacing. He touches on it so, and it's not broadly, I guess quickly, and it leaves a lot to be desired for someone, especially that's, you know, picking a book up called Depression and Metaphysics, because, you know, I'm you know, going through that. So, but what helps, what hurts. It's a great little text. I need to be a good boy and read or listen to the whole masterclass. But Robin, I'm off to hard boil some eggs for deviling. That sounds delicious. Love you, Robin. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hello, Carissa. Nice to meet you. Oh, Carissa, hi. Yes. Thank you guys. I love you so much. I really appreciate you. Thank you for letting me just, I don't know, unload. There's a lot more to be said, but I think this confluence, there's the word again, of mental health and metaphysics is one that I am just kind of innately in tune with exploring. And I think it's one that, I will forever continue to I don't know, test, try, fail, and goof with. So I love you guys. I really appreciate you stopping by. This is a weird early stream. We'll do this again soon, hopefully in a week, probably on a weekend, because I'm back to teaching kids wilderness survival, and as well as running a venue. And I think a lot of the Ouroboros of this depression is coming from not being able to do creative shit like this. So I really appreciate this vexing. I love you guys. Stay classy. Haunt on.